As we age, the body begins to respond differently to familiar things. What used to pass quickly now lingers. A mild cold becomes a prolonged illness. Inflammations occur without a clear cause. Recovery is slower, and more often than not, this is connected to the immune system. But immunity is not a separate mechanism. It depends on how the gut functions, how cells are nourished, how the liver and lymphatic system handle the load, and most importantly, it depends on what a person eats every day. After 60, even familiar foods can gradually wear down internal systems. They weaken defenses, disrupt the microbiome, and give space to bacteria that once caused no harm, but now trigger chronic inflammation. In the lungs, in the urinary tract, and very often, in the prostate. Today, we're talking about foods that quietly erode the immune system. They don't cause disease directly, but they leave the body vulnerable. And then, all it takes is a bit of cold, a stressful night, or a missed hour of sleep, and the chain reaction begins. Number 1. Butter. Symptoms: constant fatigue, weak appetite, sluggish digestion, coating on the tongue. Butter is a comfort food. Familiar, soft, warm. It feels like something safe, something natural, especially in older generations. It's spread on bread, mixed into oatmeal, added to potatoes. It's believed to help the joints, nourish the brain, or ease digestion. And in small occasional amounts, it can. But the reality changes with age, especially when butter is eaten daily. Butter contains up to 70% saturated fat. To digest it properly, the body needs strong bile flow and well-regulated enzyme production. But after 60, bile thickens, flow slows down, and enzymes are often reduced, especially in the morning when the digestive system is still sluggish. So when butter enters the system at the wrong time, particularly on an empty stomach, here's what happens. The fat isn't fully digested. It moves down the gut in semi-processed form. This irritates the intestinal lining, especially in the duodenum. It alters gut. It disrupts the microbiome balance. That imbalance damages immune protection. Why? Because more than 70% of the body's immune response depends on the gut lining and the bacteria living there. As saturated fats disturb this balance, helpful bacteria, such as Bifidobacterium and Faecalibacterium, begin to disappear. These strains are known to reduce inflammation and reinforce gut wall integrity. A study from the University of Copenhagen, 2020, found that high saturated fat intake in elderly people directly correlates with increased intestinal permeability and a reduction in key immune-modulating gut bacteria. And when these barriers are weakened, toxins and food particles can cross into the bloodstream, triggering low-grade systemic inflammation. This pulls immune cells away from where they're most needed, to constantly clean up internal waste. The result? More infections, slower healing, and a constant sense of tiredness. More than that, saturated fat stimulates the release of inflammatory cytokines, such as IL-6 and TNF-AA. According to a 2017 Tufts University study, these compounds are significantly elevated in people over 60 who consume animal fats daily. These cytokines interfere with tissue repair and weaken immune defense. So where's the line? What to do? Never eat butter on an empty stomach, especially in the morning. Don't add it to oatmeal or mashed potatoes as a habit. Reserve it for occasional use. Limit intake to 5 to 10 grams per day and pair it with fiber, greens, whole grains, to support digestion. Replace butter 2 to 3 times a week with cold-pressed oils like flaxseed, hemp, or pumpkin seed. Watch the tongue, energy, and bowel movements. They reflect digestive strain before symptoms appear. Butter is not the enemy. But when it meets slow bile, low enzyme output, and age-related gut changes, it becomes a silent stressor, and stress adds up. Number 2. Processed meats, sausages, deli meats, salami. Symptoms: dry skin, bitter aftertaste after meals, frequent swelling, irritability, shallow sleep. These products are convenient. They require no cooking, especially for those living alone. They're a go-to. A slice on bread and the meal is done. But what's inside isn't food. It's a long shelf-life formula built to last, not to nourish. First, nitrites. These are added to stabilize color and flavor. Sodium nitrite, E250, reacts with amino acids to form nitrosamines, compounds known to stress the liver and increase the body's oxidative burden. For an aging liver, which already detoxifies more slowly, this creates a toxic backlog. The immune system is pulled away from fighting real threats and into daily cleanup. Second, oxidized fats. Even in boiled or lean versions, processed meats go through intense heat. Fats become partially oxidized, creating aldehydes, toxic molecules that damage cell membranes and disrupt mitochondrial energy production. The immune system must counter these disruptions, again draining its capacity for true defense. Third, hidden sugars and starches. Many processed meats contain dextrin, corn syrup, or glucose in small amounts. They're not sweet, but they still raise blood sugar. These fluctuations, especially in older adults with slower carbohydrate metabolism, create internal instability. This leads to puffiness, low-grade inflammation, and higher infection risk. A 2022 study from the University of Reading, UK, found that older men who ate processed meats 3 or more times a week had significantly higher levels of C-reactive protein, a well-known inflammatory marker. It doesn't mean deli meat causes illness directly, but it creates the perfect environment for it. What to do? Completely remove all factory-made processed meats from the diet, even lean, natural, or home-style varieties. Cook your own protein every few days. Bake chicken, stew turkey, or boil beef. For easy sandwiches, use thin slices of home-cooked meat with mashed avocado, hummus, or roasted beets. After meat-heavy meals, drink a warm herbal infusion, mint, chamomile, or St. John's wort. This supports liver recovery. Once a week, make a meat-free day with legumes and steamed vegetables. The gut will thank you. The goal isn't perfection, it's clarity. Even the best meat is still heavy, but when it's yours, not factory-made, your body works with it, not against it. Number 3, honey. Symptoms: morning nasal congestion, frequent colds, tongue coating, fatigue after meals. Honey often carries emotional weight. It reminds us of childhood, warm tea, and care. It's considered natural, helpful, and immune-boosting. Many older adults add it to oatmeal, yogurt, herbal teas. But after 60, honey doesn't always work in your favor. The issue isn't the honey itself. It's how it behaves in an aging body with slower metabolism and a weaker immune system. Honey is made up of roughly 80% simple sugars, glucose and fructose. These sugars are absorbed into the bloodstream almost instantly, causing a sharp spike in blood sugar. In older adults, the pancreas reacts more slowly, and the cells are more resistant to insulin. That sugar spike stays elevated for longer, and it affects immunity directly. In a 2015 study from Tufts University, researchers found that even a brief increase in blood sugar can reduce neutrophil activity by 40–60%. These are the cells that react first to bacteria and viruses. In older adults, it can take twice as long to recover that immune function. Fructose, the other half of honey, is processed mainly by the liver. If consumed regularly, it can increase uric acid levels, which can trigger joint inflammation and low-grade vascular irritation, both of which slow immune function and reduce microcirculation to critical areas. There's another issue. Honey can disrupt the gut microbiome. In an aging digestive tract, sugar tends to feed yeast like Candida, not beneficial bacteria. These yeast organisms release byproducts that interfere with vitamin absorption, especially B vitamins, folate, and zinc, all essential for immune strength. Drinking honey before bedtime is especially problematic. Metabolism slows during sleep, and the sugars ferment in the gut, causing bloating, gas, and reduced overnight immune recovery. What to do? Eliminate honey after 4 p.m., even in small doses. If you crave something sweet, opt for berries, green apples, or pear-infused teas. Never consume honey on an empty stomach. Always pair it with protein or fiber, like seeds or yogurt. Replace sugar-rich snacks with fermented foods like sauerkraut or pickled vegetables. These restore gut balance. Track nasal congestion, tongue coating, and frequency of colds. They often reflect sugar overload and yeast imbalance. Honey isn't the enemy, but immunity depends on precision. If it's busy balancing your blood sugar, it won't respond quickly when illness strikes. Number 4. Salted and smoked fish. Symptoms: dry mouth, morning puffiness in hands, heaviness under the ribs, dull skin tone. Herring, mackerel, smoked salmon, salted trout. These are all seen as healthier alternatives to sausage or red meat. Many older adults eat them regularly, thinking, "It's fish, it's lighter, and it has omega-3s." And if we were talking about fresh baked fish, that would be true. But salted and smoked fish are an entirely different story. First, the salt. A standard serving of salted herring, about 100 grain, contains up to 6 grams of sodium, almost half of the daily limit. With age, kidney filtration slows down, and the body's salt balance becomes more fragile. Excess sodium leads to water retention, sluggishness, and most critically, immune suppression. A 2013 study from the University of Bonn, Germany, showed that elevated sodium levels in the blood reduce the effectiveness of Th17 cells, a key part of the immune response. Even minor infections lasted longer and were harder to control. Second, the smoking process. Even cold smoked fish accumulates polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs, compounds that irritate the digestive lining and trigger local inflammation. This disrupts gut barrier function and makes it harder to absorb nutrients and antioxidants. Third, the fat. Many smoked or salted fish varieties, like mackerel, salmon, or herring, are naturally high in fat. But during smoking or long storage, those fats oxidize. Oxidized fatty acids become free radicals, unstable molecules that damage cell membranes and reduce immune precision. Fourth, the parasite risk. Lightly salted or undercooked fish may contain parasites or their eggs. In an older body, where stomach acid is often reduced, the protection against these organisms is weakened, making infections more likely, especially if the fish hasn't been deep frozen beforehand. What to do? Eliminate factory-made salted and smoked fish, especially vacuum-packed varieties. If desired, prepare lightly salted fish at home using safe methods. Soak fresh fish, salt with herbs, and consume within 3 days. Opt for weekly servings of baked or steamed fish like cod, pollock, or haddock. Light, lean, and low in inflammation. Always pair fish with lemon, vinegar, or horseradish. These reduce bacterial and parasitic risk and support digestion. Pay attention to morning puffiness, bad breath, and dry mouth. These often reflect salt overload and oxidative stress. Fish can be one of the most nourishing foods, but when it's overly preserved, overly salty, or smoked, it stops being helpful, and slowly, it begins to erode your internal defenses. Number 5. Canned vegetables and jarred appetizers. Symptoms: metallic taste in the mouth, nighttime leg cramps, sluggish digestion, heaviness after meals. Pickles, marinated tomatoes, zucchini spread, eggplants in oil. These are common staples on many older adults' dinner tables. They feel familiar, easy, and satisfying. A spoonful from the jar, and dinner feels complete. But behind that convenience hides a slow-acting threat. First, the salt and vinegar content. Even when the taste seems mild, the actual amount of sodium and acetic acid in these jars is very high. Frequent consumption leads to 2 parallel problems: cellular dehydration and impaired absorption of key minerals, especially magnesium, potassium, and calcium, which play essential roles in nerve conductivity, heart regulation, and immune cell performance. Second, additives. Even so-called homemade recipes often contain sugar, monosodium glutamate, MSG, or vinegar concentrate. These substances are harsh on the stomach and intestinal lining, and in older bodies where tissue regeneration is slower, they create persistent low-level inflammation. It might feel like post-meal fatigue, nausea, or tightness below the sternum. A 2021 study from the University of Valencia found that frequent intake of high acidity and high sodium preserved foods in older adults lowered the activity of memory T cells, the ones that remember old infections and keep them from recurring. With that layer of defense weakened, people become more vulnerable to relapses and slower recovery. Third, preservatives. Even small traces of potassium sorbate or sodium benzoate, commonly used in store-bought jars, disrupt gut flora. Beneficial bacteria like bifidobacteria and lactobacilli drop in number, weakening the entire immune foundation. What to do? Limit canned and pickled foods to 1 to 2 servings per week. Replace with fresh or fermented vegetables, cabbage, carrots, beets, especially raw or lacto-fermented. Never keep an open jar for more than 3 days, even in the fridge. After eating pickled foods, drink a glass of water, about 200 milliliters, to help neutralize acidity. Pay attention to leg cramps, lingering taste in the mouth, or general sluggishness. These signal mineral imbalance. Marinated foods may feel nostalgic, but nostalgia isn't nourishment. The immune system doesn't care what feels familiar. It only responds to what supports or stresses it. Number 6. Reheated vegetable oil. Symptoms: itchy or dry skin, internal heat or tightness, unstable blood pressure, scattered attention. Cooking oil, sunflower, soybean, corn, often feels like a healthy kitchen staple, and it is when used wisely. But for many older people, habits like reheating leftover oil or using the same oil multiple times for frying seem harmless. In reality, this is one of the most inflammatory things you can do, and the damage builds up silently. Each time oil is heated, oxidation occurs. Lipid peroxides, aldehydes, and trans fats are formed. When reheated, these compounds multiply. They break down cell membranes, disrupt mitochondrial energy production, interfere with immune cell replication, suppress antioxidant enzyme systems. In a 2019 study from Osaka University, mice fed meals prepared with reheated oil had C-reactive protein levels, a key inflammation marker, 3 times higher than those given fresh oil. In humans, this process unfolds more slowly, but the consequences are just as real. Oxidized fats accumulate in the liver. This not only affects detoxification and hormone metabolism, but also makes immune cells sluggish and confused. They no longer react clearly to infection, and inflammation becomes more generalized. What to do? Never reuse oil for frying, even if it looks clean. Avoid cooking to the point of smoke. High heat exponentially increases harmful compounds. If frying is necessary, use fresh, refined oil and discard after one use. Prefer baking in foil, gentle steaming, or simmering with water and herbs. After fatty meals, sip warm water with lemon or bitter herbs. This supports liver detox. Oil should provide warmth, not burn. The aging body needs gentle support, not internal combustion. 6 foods. None of them seem threatening at first. You won't see warnings about them on television. People buy them with confidence, sometimes out of habit, sometimes out of affection. But these tiny choices add up, and what the body once forgave, it no longer does. We, the Elderly Council, shared this not to alarm, but to clarify, because clarity leads to strength, and in simple, informed choices, there is real support. If you recognized any of these habits in yourself, share your thoughts in the comments. Which food surprised you? Have you already made changes and felt the difference? Your voices help us continue. The more we hear from you, the more we can offer useful, honest, and gentle guidance for a longer, lighter life. Until next time.